One of my favorite shows is on TV is Shark Tank. And you've got a number of individuals on every show that are pitching their product. They're pitching their service or pitching the company that they've started. The reason I raise this is that at some point or other, you may decide that that's something that you want to go into, is start your own business. You know, when I think about, I'm a big fan of music, and it's a very similar analogy. When I think about, the best bands, they probably started with people that they knew. They probably were playing at parties. They were probably playing, as they say, a garage band, and then they ended up, playing at some bigger venues. What eventually probably happened is they started playing to the biggest venues and selling out stadiums. I'm talking about, bands like U2 or the Rolling Stones or whatever the case may be. My point is, almost every business starts with people that they know. And it expands to a larger circle, and then hopefully eventually to everyone. I'm sure Jeff Bezos, I'm sure Steve Jobs, when they first started their product, they pitched it initially to people that they knew. And then they ended up growing two of the biggest companies that have ever happened. So one of the things I'd like to do right now is to help you think of more people that you know, and some strategies to come up with more people that you know that you can show the product line to. Now, some of these people are going to be people that you sort of know. But at the end of the day, what you're going to find is that people that you sort of know or that you know really well, they're very receptive to letting you over for a Cutco appointment. So one of the things that a lot of our representatives do is they actually sit down with their mom and dad. I remember when I was a new representative, I would occasionally say, "Hey mom, can you think of anyone else I can show Cutco to?" And she would say something like, "How about, Mrs. So-and-so, did you call them? And how about this person?" And it was like 2 or 3 names here and there. What I wish I would have done was sat down, and this is something I've recommended to representatives to which they've had great success, to sat down with my mom or dad and said, "Hey mom and dad, I really hate asking you for money. I feel bad asking you for money. I'm sure you don't love giving me money, even though I'm not contributing necessarily. What I wish I would have done was sat down and said, "Hey mom and dad, I don't like asking you for money. If you could help me out, if you could help me think of 10, 15, 50 people, what I would do is I'll probably never ask you for money again." What's fascinating is that after working with Vector, or while I worked with Vector, and ever since then, I've never asked my parents for money. I didn't really know that, but if I had sat them down and asked them for names and said, "Hey, help me brainstorm anyone that you know or that you sort of know that I can call on," I'm sure that initial list would have been much more robust than me occasionally asking mom or dad for some names. Something some of our top representatives have done with also great success is just sit down with a sibling. And it could be a younger brother or sister, or it could be an older brother or sister. One of the things that some of our representatives have done is that they pay them. One of our representatives, his name was Ben, he paid his brother a quarter. His brother was younger. He said, "I'll give you a quarter for every name you gave me." And what ended up happening is his brother gave him 100 names. And when he called him, he'd say, "Hey, this is Ben." I omitted the last name on purpose. I'll call it Jones. "This is Ben Jones. I'm Peter's older brother." And the response was always like, "Oh, hey," pretty happy to hear from them. And then he would just go right into the phone approach. So that's something that a lot of people find to be a great resource to add to their names list. Another thing that you can do is just go through any organization that you've ever been involved with. Recently someone reached out to me on LinkedIn that worked with me about 20 years ago. And this is someone who is an accountant now. And he said, his name is John. He said, "Mike, do you remember me? I worked in your office in 1996. And my response was, "Of course I remember you. You were a good representative." And he talked about how Vector, the principles that he learned selling Cutco, are principles that he still uses today as an accountant. In other words, interacting with customers, always serving the customer, making sure that their needs are first met. And then ultimately, the sales principles that you do need in creating any business. So what I want to get to with that is that you've got opportunities also on social media. So there's social media, your own social media network. There's the social media network of your mom and dad. And that's what a lot of people, or boyfriend or girlfriend, or friends. So in other words, you've got a connection to those individuals that you can just personally reach out to via instant messenger or any other source, any other avenue to be able to get those names and numbers. Or you could say something simply as, hey, I noticed you have an Aunt Sally who lives nearby. Can I get her number, right? Another thing that is very productive is, again, any organization, whether that's a church or temple or any organization, whether it's a school that you went to, going through the high school yearbook, going through a high school directory, or perhaps any other directories that you may have, whether it's a golf club or anything else that may be. Previous teams that you've played on is another great resource to be able to get great clients. Think also about people that you know that know a lot of people. All right, so one of the representatives that I worked with, he knew the mayor from his town, and that's someone who knows a lot of people. There's people that have professions that know a lot of people. So I remember I called on my girlfriend's, I had hair at the time, but my girlfriend's hairstylist, right? That person knew a lot of people. I called on my mom and dad's accountant. That person also knew a lot of people. So when you're thinking about people to show Cutco to, don't only think of people that you know, but think of people that you know that know a lot of people.